Hello, everyone. What we're going to do today is initiate the process for creating a web server using Server 2016. Now, remember, before this process should be started for the different aspects I'm going to be doing, you really should have already promoted this server to a domain controller and made sure that its DNS settings under the network adapter points back to itself. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to do just some not troubleshooting, but some logistical stuff just to make sure our server is good and go, ready. So what I can do is click local server, and I see that I've already created a easy, simple username. My fault, easy, simple host name for this server, as well as giving it a domain that is participating in. So again, make sure before you start this process, you make sure that you give the computer a host name, promote it to a domain controller, and give it an adequate domain name because you're going to be using it later on. Now I'm going to check its network settings, which is by going, one way that you can do it is by going down through the GUI and opening up Network and Sharing Center, change adapter settings, right-clicking on whatever Ethernet interface you're going to be using, clicking on the word Internet Protocol version 4. Don't click on the check mark because it'll turn the protocol off. And then hit Properties. You want to go ahead and make sure that you set some DNS settings and static IP settings, which should have been done before you promoted your domain controller. So we see the actual IP address that this server is using is 100.100.110. And for all of these experiments, I'm making it use itself as its preferred DNS server. And of course, as usual, another way that you can check your IP address is just by opening up command line by using the run option. That's down here. Typing in either of the two commands that will turn on the command line interface, which would be CMD or the whole word command. And let me make this font larger so we all can see it. And then, of course, you can type in the two different versions of the display network settings command. And the first version, of course, is ipconfig. And we see the required IP address settings that we need for this experiment. Or you can do the long version of the same command, which is ipconfig space, and then the character on the question mark, which we call a switch, which is being used by ipconfig and certain other commands, and then the word all. Now we get to see a more detailed version of our settings. Of course, we see the host name. We see the name of the domain that this domain controller will be referring to for DNS settings. We also see the IP address settings. We see the default gateway settings, which is really not necessary for these experiments, but I just didn't want to leave that block empty. And we see the DNS server that the server is going to be listening to is itself. After making sure all those things are there, we're ready to turn this thing into a web server. To start the process, we would click on the dashboard feature. Just as when we're creating a domain controller, this is where you can add additional jobs to this server. We're going to go to add roles and features. This is letting you know that you're about to do some major changes to this server. We'll go ahead and hit next. This gives us a chance to put all the features on this physical server or to make a whole bunch of virtual servers. We're going to keep it on this physical server. We double check the domain name settings, the host name settings, and the IP address settings. Then we hit next. Here's where we start getting the services that we're going to use. These are a number of different services that we can actually put on this machine. We want to go ahead and use web services. Now, of course, when you select specific services, the server will also make recommendation of other services you might need. We'll go ahead and hit add features for anything it recommends. Then we hit next, and you see that the web server feature is fully checked. For this experiment, we don't need any of these other features. So we'll just go ahead and we'll hit next. It begins to give us a number of scripts of the things that we've selected. And then at the last one, it'll give us a confirmation to say, are we sure that we want these things to happen? Well, all of these, we primarily just hit next. Now, something for this experiment that we're going to do just to reduce the amount of security that's going to be required to access this web server, we're going to go ahead and give it basic authentication and not request filtering. So I'm going to uncheck request filtering, and then I'm going to give it basic authentication. Again, this is just so we can do extremely easy experiments. In the event that you were creating a functional web server that you was going to host on the internet, you would keep a whole bunch of these security features. Then we hit next. Here's where it gives us a confirmation of all the things that we asked for and or all the things that it's going to be installed. We just hit install and wait a few moments, actually about 2 or 3 minutes. What you'll begin to see is that the installation process will start, and you'll see a blue line at the top of the screen going from left to right. This is letting you know that there's something going on the server. If you put the mouse on top of the blue line, it will actually display a amount of progress that has been completed by the installation. Again, these numbers are not exact. It's just letting you know that something's going on the server. Oftentimes, when you're doing these add roles, you'll see the close button there. I recommend that you not use it because you really want to keep track of what your server is doing and or not doing. If you hit the close feature, it's not easily able to see if the installation has failed in some point or another. So I usually wait until it gets to installation succeeded, and then I close it out. Upon the completion of the installation, you'll notice there is another link that becomes active. IIS is short for Internet Information Services. It lets you know that IIS has been enabled on this server, which means, hey, it's ready to host websites. Let's check some of the other control features for IIS. We can go under Tools now, and we can go all the way down to Internet Information Services. We can click the list arrow next to the name of our server. Then we can click the folder of the OU that holds our sites, hit the list arrow in front of that. And then you will see a link that says default website. All websites you create will actually be underneath this organizational unit. The default website is automatically installed when you install IIS, so you can test to see if the website is actually functioning. Let's see if we can go to the website. Easiest way to test to see if we can go to the website is by going and opening up a browser. Luckily, Server 2016 gives you an instance of Internet Explorer. The first time it opens, of course, it's going to ask you some security settings for the server. We can hit Do Not Send to Microsoft, then hit OK. And what I like to do is close it out and open it back up so it's a clean browser. Now I'm just going to type in the domain name that I gave this domain controller when I created the domain. The domain is automatically connected to the default website that's installed when you install IIS. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to cool.com. This is the Internet Explorer default web page shell. This just lets you know that IIS is operating on this server. That's literally how easy it is to install Internet Information Services on your server. Hope you guys enjoyed the lesson. Talk to you later.